A warning from President Rodrigo Duterte as he pays the province of Palawan a visit. He tells resort and other establishments in the famous tourist destination to follow rules or face temporary closure, just like what happened in Boracay. In a speech at the Subarao Festival in Puerto Princesa, the president said he is giving notice to all resorts operating near the sea to have a water treatment system. Mr. Duterte also said local government in Palawan should control the number of tourists and urged officials to address the problems of blackouts in the island province. Here's the president in his own words.
Itong ninyo, linisin lang ninyo. Huwag lang ninyo i-overload. Huwag ninyong i-overload. Bantay kayo dyan. Boracay is a classic case of overloading. Can carry only so much people. So I'm giving notice also to all hotels nag-operate dyan sa dagat. Huwag ninyong itapon yung tubo ninyo diretso. If you want to build a hotel, add another so many million to have a water treatment.
Government closed down Boracay for 6 months beginning April to clean it up. The island opened to the public again last October 26th. In other news, a new survey shows more Filipinos did not have jobs in the third quarter of 2018, and most of these Filipinos are women. Our Paulo Barcelon tells us more about the new poll from the social weather stations.
For almost 10 years now, Ricardo Gonzaga has been unemployed. He makes ends meet by working as a seasonal helper and taxi driver.
Wala pong mapuntahan na rin, mapirma yung mga regular na trabaho, wala pong mapasukan. Kung dito na po ako nakatira, halos dito rin po inuubos yung kinikita ko.
But for Jason, who is a soon-to-be father working part-time as an aircon maintenance technician, the struggle to look for extra jobs may take a little bit longer just so he can save enough for his family.
Minsan, hindi na nga namin inintindi yung mga handa-handa. Kasi, kumbaga, paghahanda ka pa, wala ka nang, kumbaga, pangkain na lang yung gagawin mo eh.
Ricardo and Jason are just part of the 9.8 million Filipinos, or 22% of the population, who are jobless in the third quarter of 2018, according to a social weather stations poll conducted from September 15 to 23 among 1,500 respondents. Metro Manila still has the highest number of jobless adults at 26.4%, an increase of nearly 7 points. Optimism that there will be more jobs also declined this quarter to plus 24 points in September from the plus 32 points registered in June. The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines says the influx of fresh graduates in the third quarter contributed to the decline of optimism. The survey shows most unemployed were 18 to 24-year-olds. The group is urging the government to fast-track its promises of better jobs under the Build, Build, Build program and to ensure that companies adhere to labor laws.
Dapat sa ngayon, tumataas na yung job opportunities because capitalists and businessmen are preparing for Christmas. So, in order to produce more goods, they have to hire more workers.
In response to the survey results, Malacanang says the government is doing its best to address labor problems in the country. Paulo Barcelon, CNN Philippines.
A check on our global headlines. World leaders gathered in Paris Sunday to mark Armistice Day, which coincides with Veterans Day in the United States. Armistice Day remembers the end of the First World War, which killed some 8.5 million people. During remarks at the Arc de Triomphe, French President Emmanuel Macron issued a warning about the resurgence of nationalism, a philosophy that fueled the First World War and was recently espoused by U.S. President Donald Trump.
Patriotism is the exact opposite of nationalism. Nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism by saying, our interests first, who cares about the others? We erase what a nation holds dearest, what gives it life, what makes it great, and what is essential, its moral values.
Mr. Trump was among the leaders assembled for Macron's remarks. Trump declared himself to be a nationalist at a rally supporting Texas Senator Ted Cruz in October and has pushed an American-first foreign policy. Three major wildfires in the U.S. state of California have killed more than 20 people. They have also destroyed thousands of homes and forced more than 250,000 people from their homes. And officials say Sunday's strong winds could make an already dangerous fire situation even worse. In Southern California, the Woolsey and Hills fire have burned more than 30,000 hectares. And in Northern California, the Camp Fire has become the most destructive and the third deadliest in the U.S. state's modern history. It burned more than 40,000 hectares and destroyed more than 6,000 homes. And surgeons in Australia have successfully separated 15-month-old twins from the South Asian nation of Bhutan. Dawa and Nima were joined at the stomach and grew up facing each other. They flew to Melbourne Royal Children's Hospital last month to meet with the surgical team ahead of the surgery. The delicate procedure took place over 6 hours and involved about 25 surgeons, nurses, and anesthetists. The University of Maryland Medical Center says conjoined twins occur once every 200,000 live births. About 70% are female, and they are always identical twins. Scientists believe that conjoined twins develop from a single fertilized egg that fails to separate completely as it divides.
More global stories. Three incredibly destructive wildfires continue to burn across the U.S. state of California. Strong winds are expected to pick up today, fueling fires that have already killed more than 20 people and forced hundreds of thousands from their homes. CNN's Camila Bernal is in Malibu, California with this report.
This is an oceanfront neighborhood in Malibu, California, and like you see behind me, much of it completely destroyed. Homes, cars reduced down to ashes, and there is no good news. The winds are expected to pick back up again, and in the words of the Ventura County Fire Chief, Mother Nature is turning her fan back on.
You know, we thought we were ready. We'd hosed everything down, but when it came over this ridge right here behind us, it was a 100-foot wall of flames.
Three major California wildfires have killed more than 20 people, destroyed thousands of homes, and forced more than 250,000 people from their homes across the state. And officials say Sunday's strong winds could make an already dangerous fire situation even worse. In Southern California, the Woolsey and Hill fires have burned almost 90,000 acres.
These winds will be as severe, if not more severe, than we saw in the last few days.
And in Northern California, the Camp Fire has become the most destructive and the third deadliest in the state's modern history. It's burned more than 100,000 acres and destroyed more than 6,000 homes. Officials warn residents in both Northern and Southern California to continue to stay alert and be prepared to evacuate.
Listen for evacuations, and please don't let your guard down. The need for evacuations is still present.
But for those who have lost their homes, a determination to move forward.
You got to be strong, you know. We rebuild. This is where we live.
And firefighters made some progress yesterday as those winds died down, but that small window of opportunity is closing, and that is part of the reason why many are still under evacuation orders and why authorities are telling neighbors here to continue to be vigilant. Reporting in Malibu, California, I'm Camila Bernal. Now back to you.
U.S. President Donald Trump landed in Paris Friday to commemorate the end of World War I. But at home, Mr. Trump is fighting battles of his own. CNN's Jim Acosta has the story.
Leaving for a weekend trip to France, President Trump is having trouble getting clear of some big storms brewing back home. The Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. attorney in New York is gathering evidence that shows the president was involved in hush money deals with two women who say they had affairs with Mr. Trump, Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. The Journal says the president was involved in or briefed on nearly every step of the payments. Contrast that with the president's comments last April when he claimed he didn't know about money going to Daniels.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels?
No. As he was leaving for Paris, the president was pressed on the other big legal mess hanging over him, the Russia investigation, specifically his decision to make Matt Whitaker his acting attorney general, a move that puts a critic of the probe in charge of it.
I didn't know Matt Whitaker. He worked for Attorney General Sessions. He was very, very highly thought of and still is highly thought of. But this only comes up because anybody that works for me, they do a number on them.
The president repeatedly claimed he didn't know Whitaker.
I don't know Matt Whitaker.
But that's not true, if you believe what Mr. Trump told Fox News last month.
I never talk about that, but I can tell you Matt Whitaker's a great guy. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
Prominent D.C. attorney George Conway, husband of White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, argued in a New York Times op-ed that Whitaker's selection is unconstitutional. It's illegal, and it means that anything Mr. Whitaker does or tries to do in that position is invalid. The president brushed off Conway's concerns.
He's just trying to get publicity for himself. Why don't you do this? Why don't you ask Kellyanne that question, all right? All right? She might know him better than me. I really don't know the guy.
The Democrats who are about to take control in the House are vowing to protect special counsel Robert Mueller.
The American people spoke on Tuesday. They want a check on abuses of power. That's, I think, one of the issues that was on the ballot. And so we have a number of options. One, we're going to have a funding the government vote coming up here in a couple weeks, and we're going to insist that we protect the Mueller probe.
Even with all of that on his hands, the president is also sparring with, of all people, Michelle Obama. In excerpts of the former First Lady's new book obtained by the Washington Post, Mrs. Obama says she'll never forgive Mr. Trump for being a birther, saying, what if someone with an unstable mind loaded a gun and drove to Washington? What if that person went looking for our girls? The president dismissed that and took a swipe at Barack Obama.
She got paid a lot of money to write a book, and they always insist that you come up with controversial. Well, I'll give you a little controversy back. I'll never forgive him for what he did to our United States military by not funding it properly.
The president is said to be, quote, on the warpath about vote counts still underway in places like Florida. Mr. Trump complained of voter fraud, but when asked for evidence, he didn't have any.
Although I hear, I don't know, you tell me, it's always the Democrats.
The Belgian ambassador, he's coming over. We're going to talk about, of course, Belgian-Philippine relations, and also, the commemoration of World War I. Belgium obviously played a very big role there.
Okay. Right. Well, speaking of guests, we have the Quezon City International Pink Film Festival 2018. It starts in a few days, and we'll be having someone over to tell you more about this wonderful festival.
Wow, we have a lot of guests this morning.
Do you have a guest?
No, I don't. I don't know. As far as I know, I don't know if anyone from Meralco is joining, but we were talking about how it was a busy weekend in the world of sports, especially in basketball. There was a PBA, the UAAP, but how about the Meralco Bulls? They take game one of that series against Alaska. They were on the brink of elimination so many times.
6 times.
6 times. So we were discussing that, right? Before we went on cam, and Rhea had an explanation of what actually happened. Insight.
Of course, your hubby, assistant coach Luigi Trillo.
Right, my totally unprofessional insight into this. Well, I think they're peaking at the right time, and I think after they did their FIBA stint in Thailand, they just bonded. Something started to gel. I don't know what, but hey, if they can take it all the way, what an amazing story that will be.
Pwede ka mamaya 10:30.
I have somebody's phone number I can give you.
Exclusive. All right, stick around until 7:30 for those stories and more. Meantime, here are the Monday morning's headlines.
President Rodrigo Duterte warns resort owners in Palawan to follow the rules or the island will be temporarily closed like Boracay. Malacanang says the government is addressing joblessness as a new survey shows 22% of Filipino adults are without jobs. And we speak to international best-selling authors Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera on their collaboration book, What If It's Us?